experimentamos apremio en la ciudadanía con respecto a esas aspiraciones, ya que en ello tienen puestas sus esperanzas muchos conciudadanos. Los cambios que señalamos alientan la esperanza de todo cubano, dado que la urgencia de estos cambios encuentra su fundamento en la experiencia vivida desde las limitaciones, las escasez, la falta de progreso o familiar de no pocos cubanos, quienes sienten que la vida se acaba con el paso de los años sin poder concretar las aspiraciones propias de todo ser humano y familia, reiterando que por consecuencia de ello muchos de los jóvenes aspiran realizar su proyecto de vida a un futuro mejor, no en Cuba, sino ante la posibilidad de emigrar y encontrarlo en otros países. Desgraciadamente, expresan los obispos, con la falta de oportunidad y la inmigración se ha perdido mucho y se sigue perdiendo esa riqueza que está llamada a multiplicarse en Cuba. Eso es lo que reconocemos como capital humano, que es un aspecto necesario e imprescindible para la edificación económica necesaria y fundamentada en las reformas necesarias para el país ahora y en el futuro. La presente realidad sociopolítico-económica ha venido evolucionando en los últimos 54 años y el anhelo y pensar de la ciudadanía, y no necesariamente el miópico pensar de los que rigen con sus riendas el país, y por ello actualmente no pocos advierten los aspectos que resultan obsoletos y no viables de esa visión estática de la realidad en nuestro país. Las aspiraciones de superación personal deben ser alentadas para lograr así una sociedad civil vigorosa, que será siempre un bien necesario para todo país que aspire a una sana prosperidad social y económica sostenida por sólidos pilares morales y espirituales. Confiamos al Señor y no en los hombres, nuestra esperanza que no defrauda. La iniciación de ese proceso de reformas siempre amplias en bien de la población y de las nuevas generaciones de cubanos, con la respuesta positiva por parte de los funcionarios políticos. Los obispos de Cuba queremos ver en todo esto, tal como lo expresamos en la carta pastoral El amor todo lo espera en 1993, el inicio de un proceso de reformas siempre amplias en bien de la población y de las nuevas generaciones de cubanos. Confiados en el Señor, esperamos estas reformas. Porque la mentalidad prevalente en nuestro pueblo es que lo que hay es que resolver el problema sea como sea. Pero esa realidad se tiene que cambiar en el espíritu y pensar de nuestro pueblo cubano. Esa existente disyuntiva que prevalece en el pensar ideológico revolucionario y la realidad social son mutuamente exclusivas en su resolución a los problemas sociopolíticos económicos del país, lo cual se explica como una de las causas que genera frustración y con ello el anhelo o deseo a emigrar, sobre todo en los que son el tesoro de todo país, la juventud. Finalmente, afirman los obispos de Cuba que en la diáspora se encuentran un gran número de los hijos de la nación cubana y sus descendientes, nosotros, que siguen considerándose cubanos y aman a Cuba. Gran verdad. Por lo tanto, esos hijos de Cuba no pueden ser excluidos del diálogo nacional que debe tenerse, que debe expresarse abiertamente como un diálogo entre todos los cubanos, tomando en cuenta y en orden a favorecer una política inclusiva mediante el respeto a las diferencias que permita aliviar las tensiones y los sufrimientos que padecen numerosas personas y familias, así como un intercambio comercial justo y orientado al beneficio de todos, repitiendo nuevamente el llamado del Beato de Dios Juan Pablo II de que el mundo se abriera a Cuba y Cuba se abriera al mundo como una concreta realidad. Antes de comenzar su recorrido por la isla cubana, los obispos le confiamos a nuestra Madre el divulgar el amor de Dios Padre por todos sus hijos, verdad inmutable de Dios que no viene de hombre alguno, porque es de Dios. Por lo tanto, el futuro de la patria ha sido confiado a Dios por intercesión de nuestra Madre, María de la Caridad del Cobre. A ella le presenta a su pueblo sus necesidades y aspiraciones, sus sufrimientos y anhelos, su privación de libertad como pueblo, los separados en la familia de sus seres más queridos, privaciones humanas que en conciencia no pueden sobremirar, sino que hay que detenerse y decir que es imprescindible que Cuba sea la casa de todos y para todos los cubanos, donde convivan la justicia, la libertad y un clima de serena fraternidad. Que así sea.
Pues muy bien, los felicito a todos, a los panelistas y a nuestros invitados, porque estamos exactamente a tiempo. Vamos a abrir ahora la fase final de preguntas y respuestas, y creo que hay una pregunta, por favor.
Una de las, I'll ask in English. One of the fundamental assumptions for all the infrastructure conversations is that we have an adequate labor force trained for the jobs that we're seeking. I don't believe we have an education system anymore in Cuba that was reflective of the pride that we had back in 1959. I think one of the focus areas for the reconstruction and the re-energization of Cuba has to be focused on the re-engineering of the education system.
Excuse me, do you have the question to anyone specific?
Yes.
Yes.
To Elena, since she's in the education system. Now, so I'm making a recommendation that in the next venue that we actually put a focus on education. And the critical element of education is, if you look at the foundations of the economy, because everybody's asking, where are we going to get the money to do all this stuff? Well, what is going to be the fundamental of the economy? Is it going to be natural resources, human resources, or financial resources? Well, I'm not sure we can count on financial resources unless we have the human resources. Okay? So focus has to be put on, are we going to build the economy based on agriculture, tourism, finance, services? But we got to define what that it is so that we have an applicable workforce to actually complement that. Costa Rica did a beautiful job of that in 1992 when they said we're going to transform our industries from ecotourism and agriculture to services, pharmaceutical, and technology. Right now, Costa Rica has Intel, Pfizer, Abbott Labs, and a growing public-private sector, including IBM and Procter & Gamble, in a 15-year period. But it was a fundamental strategy which says we're starting out from the end. What is our vision for a strategy and a fundamental economic plan, and work it backwards to what's the infrastructure that we need.
Elena, thank you. Elena.
I agree 100%. I don't know if this is on. Yes. Okay. That education is going to be a basis. Education is the basis for the entire labor force, and depending on the areas that will be developed, that labor force needs to then, or the education system needs to respond to that. So for example, in engineering, we have, for our accreditation of our educational programs, one of the things that we have to answer to is, where do our students go when they graduate? Are they getting employed? We have to interview the employers to see if the students were well prepared. And so it's a feedback system between the industry needs and the educational needs. And there is a process already in place through our accreditation here in the United States for engineering programs, for example. In addition to that, I just wanted to add that education itself is a business. And so there is a opportunity there as far as creating business opportunities in Cuba associated with educational activities. Another aspect is the infrastructure of education, because in order to educate, you need to have computers, you need to have libraries, you need to have access to databases, and all of that needs to be in place in order to be able to teach and to transmit information as well.
And not only the institutional education, K through 12 and university, you got a labor force already, so you got to train that part.
Yes, exactly. A retraining of the labor forces.
Very good. Yes.
I was going to ask this question to Julio, but actually it applies to any business. I think it's more appropriate for me. This problem was mentioned before, but I didn't hear the answer, the solution. Let's say Julio goes to Cuba with Burger King, I'm sure it's going to be a quick success right away. He goes there with $1 million. How he translates those millions in return in dollars when there's no way to, it's only Cuban pesos. What is the solution to that problem?
I mean, the Cuban people will have to decide that, but a dollarization of the Cuban economy, at least short term, is probably the most likely situation, as you've seen in other Latin American countries. And if there is a substantial radical change in Cuba, and I'm glad to see that the Cuban church is thinking along those lines, I think that there will likely be a dollarization of the Cuban economy that might be permanent or it might be temporary towards a transition to a Cuban peso like the Cuban peso that existed pre-revolution, which was actually often on a par or even more valuable than the US dollar.
Yes. Juan or Julio, would you like to comment on the questions?
No, that's a question that was asked many years ago when we were looking. Remember, there was a rumor that Castro had passed away many years ago, and everybody put plans together and all that, and that was one of the big topics, and I think you've answered it.
Okay.
It's a fluid process, so, but it is true that in most countries in the Caribbean, particularly those that were British governments, with the exception of maybe Jamaica, that were formerly British governments, usually their dollar sometimes is even stronger than ours, and so I would think that would be something that will happen if the demand and the volume is there. One point we didn't make that I would like to make, though, is, I was fortunate that, my father, like many other people my age, our parents had the vision to get the heck out of Dodge when the communists came in. But the kid that was 7 years old that's in Cuba today, who's 59 years old like me, they had nothing to do with it. So it's very important that whether it's ownership, management, employees, it's very important to the training comment. It's very important that the people of Cuba participate in whatever way that can happen. I think that's if we've learned anything, is we don't want to get back to the old. There was a dark side as well, and not everything was glitter before, and so you want to make sure that we try to be better than we were before, and so it's going to take the spirit of having everybody be better off,
Very good, Julio. Questions? Yes.
Pedro, may I give some comment, please?
Please, of course.
High respect to all the speakers, and ladies and gentlemen, you have raised the questions. I represent Taiwan government here. I have a suggestion. Find a chance to go to visit Taiwan. Some 60 years ago, when Taiwan was recovered from Japanese colonial rule, Taiwan's per capita income was less than 100 US dollars. But last year, Taiwan's per capita purchasing power parity has reached 38,000 US dollars between Belgium and Germany. Taiwan has no natural resources. 95% of our energy is imported. Only thing we have is the only way when encountering the other side across Taiwan Strait, less than 100 miles, is a communist. And we have developed ourselves from a post-colonial agricultural economy to a capital-intensive, high-tech intensive, innovation-intensive industries. And now, I recently was interviewed by Miami today. They put me as an achiever. I'm so humbled. Today or yesterday's newspaper. I mentioned, when I was in 7th grade, I remember some of my underwear was still made by American-assisted flower bags. And now, even President Obama's wife, Michelle, her dress is designed by Taiwanese designers. And she wears the jewelry designed by Taiwanese. And what that tells you is that, development is step by step. I really appreciate Pedro gave me several great chances in listening to his sagacious presentations. Like, he one day told me, I need to mention something. Taiwan now is actually the largest investor in Chinese mainland, about 400 billion US dollars. And Taiwan is the 3rd largest foreign reserve holding nation in the world. Well, we have 400 billion US dollars in foreign reserve. And all this were developed for the past 60 years. And we have that experience dealing with what communism brought to Chinese people, make them lazy. And attitude, attitude were mentioned. Yes, I think Taiwan businessmen, they have a lot of experience in dealing with that. And we have, thanks generosity of Pedro, about 2 months ago, we have about 50 Taiwan's industrialists. They gathered together here, just in this room, because we have about more than 100 companies from Taiwan invested in here in South Florida. I believe they are a good source because they want to do big business too. They also target on future Cuba. I think with our close cooperation, we really can make something, visible, and we can make something real, and we can realize, our idea, because Taiwan, is a very strong anti-communist country. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Philip Wang.
The Minister of Finance for the Free Cuba.
Actually, Taiwan is a model for the future, because you can see the picture of a Cuba that in 1960 was up here, and Taiwan was very poor. And 53 years later, you have exactly the opposite. And actually, Taiwan and Cuba have many similarities, islands, agricultural, etc. And they were capable of doing it. And Cuba, yes, we can do it. Thank you, Doctor. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thank you for the panelists. I think it has been a great presentation. Thank you very much.